Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jew here. I am the chef and owner of Mr. Jew's in Chinatown, San Francisco. Today we're actually at my fast casual spot called Mama Hoo Hoo in the inner Richmond. We're here in the production kitchen. It's a little crazy going on, but we're gonna do a fried chicken with a technique that's pretty old school. And then it's gonna be seasoned with our MSG seasoning, which is essentially mushroom, seaweed, garlic seasoning. What we have is a drumstick attached to a thigh. So the full leg. This has its bone, its tailbone still attached. If you can get that, that's great. If not, it's no worries. It's just gonna kind of help protect everything in the process, but it'll totally be fine without it if your butcher has already removed that. So we're gonna weigh it first in its raw state, and then we're gonna do 1% of the weight in seasoning. So this was basically 6 grams of salt. Just let this hang out. The original recipe was from the original restaurant that we had kind of taken over in Chinatown. It was called 4 C's. My grandpa had found and saved an article for me when I had told him that I would be taking over the 4 C's. He had given me a newspaper clipping of their chef showing this recipe, which was called 4 C's fried chicken. This is based after his recipe, and his recipe calls for you to salt it, let it hang out for an hour or two, and essentially then blanch it. It's gonna be a quick blanch. Count to 10 and we're done. And you can see what happens in that even just that quick blanching time. The skin is kind of tightened up. It's cooked a little bit. But most importantly, what's happened is this happens when we prepare like Peking duck and everything. It's like the pores have opened, and at this stage, this is the stage in which like we can reintroduce seasoning and alter its skin, and the result of like basically adding, in this case, this marinade is a combination of maltose. So maltose is essentially gives you all the characteristics of sugar. So it'll caramelize, it'll like it's sticky, and it gives you color. Like it'll caramelize the skin in a really nice way, but it won't give you all that sweetness that sugar does. So maltose is really great for savory applications when you want the kind of the properties of what sugar could do without giving you the sweetness of sugar. So this is maltose, and then like 2 types of kind of acid. It's red vinegar, and the red vinegar is essentially like also going to provide color, and lemon juice, and that is essentially the acid's going to actually make the skin crispy. But this is going to take some time. It's going to take some time just air drying, and that's essentially what's happening is as we baste this and let it dry, all of what we're adding, in this marinade to the skin is going to be slowly, the water is going to be then removed, and essentially all of this marinade is going to be inside the skin. So right now you can imagine the pores are open of the skin, and we're adding the maltose and the vinegar to the skin, and then it's drying, and then when it dries, this marinade is going to be inside the skin. So when it fries, it'll kind of show itself in the form of, when it fries, it'll caramelize, it'll get crispy, and it's really like a really awesome process. That's really like all you do. And then essentially like we're gonna put it on a rack. At this stage, all you wanna do is put this in the refrigerator and let it dry for another 24 hours. Baste it 2 more times in the second day with the marinade. The third day is what this is. Nice and dry. You can see the difference between the skin at this stage compared to the first day versus the third day. Just like some of the water, like I said, has been removed from that air drying. And the skin is now, it's tighter. And essentially like all the seasoning now inside, the salt, the vinegar, the maltose, the lemon juice, all of it's like inside the skin, like I said now. So that's the chicken process. And we'll fry it after and go through kind of that procedure. The other part of this recipe is this MSG, this mushroom seaweed garlic. We kind of did some research, because MSG obviously is it's a pretty hot topic, I would say. And I know Dave and Chris have their opinions about it too. MSG started off as like a Japanese professor understanding like that there was like this other flavor that was found in seaweed. But the origin of it is that it is naturally derived from seaweed. So, as we do as chefs, we go through every part of our recipe and try to find little pathways for inspiration. And I kind of just wanted to go back to the origin of like MSG. One, the other part of the history and is this whole this part of MSG and it's kind of how it was used against the Chinese community to really stifle the success of Chinatown and Chinese food in America. And it's kind of had a really bad stigma to what MSG is and how it's used. And I think there is a lot of chefs right now that are trying to, and David and Chris are two of them, trying to educate people about MSG is like in Doritos. Like if you don't like Doritos, then don't associate MSG to Chinese food. So this is part of the conversation too, of just people's willingness to understand what MSG is and to be more educated about its history and also what it really is. So for us, going back to some of this origin is where we were inspired. And so the seaweed is a part of this recipe, and we just brush off some of this excess, basically salt that's on the outside of this, and you'll see this kind of crystallize as it kind of stores. So to prepare it, you basically just wipe this all off. And then we can start cutting this into kind of squares. And this seaweed, there's a lot of seaweeds out there. This is kombu, some of the kind of largest seaweed that you can find. And then for the mushrooms that we have, shiitake, king trumpet, and some enoki. Just add all these to a pickling solution. So water, and we have this recipe available for everybody. Rice vinegar, salt, sugar, star anise, and some coriander. And yeah, we're just gonna bring this up to boil. And when that boils, we'll throw in our seaweed, we'll throw in our shiitake. These mushrooms, we kind of like roasting ahead of time and then dropping them into the pickle. We're essentially wanting to reiterate the mushroom seaweed garlic. We have essentially created a spice. It's kind of a seasoned salt. And it has all these components. So there's mushroom powder, kombu, garlic powder, some other seasonings that kind of complement all those things. But there is no factory created MSG. This is kind of like a seasoning that is all of these things that we think kind of has the flavor of MSG. And it's actually, I think, even more complex than MSG. But it's also supposed to be there to kind of instigate a conversation about MSG. The mushrooms, we would have, just oiled them up, seasoned them, and then kind of browned them up a little bit of oil to this, a little bit of salt, and then this would go into the oven. It's like 350 for like 20 minutes, but you're trying to get it to be caramelized and like, it doesn't have to be like fully cooked because they're going to get essentially pickled in the hot pickle. So, but they should be caramelized, the finished result. So the mushroom, what it does to complement, I think, the seaweed is you get that surf and turf kind of like in a vegetable format, right? Like you get the earthy mushroom forest flavors, and then you get like the oceanic, saline parts of the seaweed, and that combination is, you know, that in itself, that surf and turf combination is like, that's kind of where these complexities of flavor happen. In Chinese food, like I've just learned over the course of understanding like the cuisine more, shrimp and pork, like that combination is just like, it's kind of legendary, you know. And it's like, so you find these ways to bring that complexity of flavor, and a lot of times like it is kind of this surf and turf of like ingredients. And then I think the garlic, just because it's like such a binding flavor, it kind of like creates the backbone of gluing all of the like other flavors together, because kind of see like the surf and turf as being very like extreme on other extremes of flavor. The garlic kind of just brings everything together and kind of just makes everything like really happy together. And I think like with mushrooms, like it's all about like different textures, you know, especially these cultivated mushrooms like the shiitake and the king trumpet and the zenopes. Like it's about like these textures that you get. Yeah, there's probably a nuance of flavor that they each have. But what I love about mushrooms and kind of providing a I'd say like an assortment of them is really like the textures they bring. And then you can see like the seaweed is now, you know, kind of, you know, braised and pickled. This is kind of like the more, I would say, like literal versions of what this is. You know, this is still mushroom, seaweed, and garlic, but this is more of what people kind of know it as. And so I thought that was important to show, you know, on the plate, just to like reiterate like what this MSG is. We can start getting this chicken fried. Oil is at 350. Our chicken is at a 3-day stage. So blanched, basted, air dried, and now we're in the 3rd day stage. So I'm gonna bring these over to the fryer. I'll cook 3 of them up. The one thing nice about this too, I think if you are considering to deep fry at home, because of the air drying, it's removed a lot of the water of the chicken. So there's a little less, I would say, like danger in frying this style of chicken because it's so dry already. I don't have an air fryer, but I think this is like probably something that definitely can be tinkered with if, you know, deep frying is not something you want to do at home. Deep fried food is delicious. I mean, the amazing part about this chicken to me is that there's no starch, there's no flour dredge, there's no additions to be flung onto the chicken to get crispy. This is all about the technique of getting the skin crispy. And you'll see too, like the meat that doesn't have skin around it, it also gets crispy from the process of this technique. It's 8 minutes frying at 350, and then we like to rest it for about 4 or 5 minutes after. Because it's on the bone, you're gonna kind of get a little bit, that resting time gonna like carry over some of the cooking, and it's gonna also like just concentrate all the juices. So the resting is like really important. Here's the pickle, hot pickle liquid. You would have thrown in our seaweed and our roasted mushrooms. And then, yeah, this brine just that it sits in becomes like this, like, I mean, this is also like really delicious. I like to like just off, you know, kind of like off the heat, throw in your kombu. And this is like, I think when you make quick dashi, that's kind of one of the things is like, if you want to make a quick dashi, kind of using warm water, not boiling water, and kind of bloom your kombu in that. We're cooling this down at this stage, so yeah, the kombu ends up tasting tender, like you can tear it, you know. But it's delicious though. So it's that light pickle is like a compliment to the fried chicken. What we're looking for, because like we're, you know, obsessed with getting it to the exact point of where it's like just finished cooking. You know, some of the benefit of having it on the bone is that carryover time is gonna like kind of give you a bigger window of when the chicken can be cooked and rested. It's gonna give you a little bit more of a window of how succulent it can be, even if you cook it a little bit too long. But some things that you want to look for is kind of the color, you know, and this is like, you can see already like what color is happening here in the fryer. Essentially, like, that's a good sign. Like, you know, you're wanting to see this skin caramelize like that. Pretty much like, you know, in half the time that it's down, like around the 3 or 4 minute mark, you should be getting that kind of level of caramelization. And then it's just going to kind of deepen. It won't really get too much darker than that over the course of the frying, but it's going to just, obviously, like, you want to cook the chicken all the way through, and you're going to want to, like, I'd say, like, just, you know, the caramelization starts evening out, like, a little bit more. And you can see, like, what's happening here too, like, these like bubbles, that's just like how crispy the skin is now getting too. Like, some of that moisture inside the skin is trying to escape, and it's being trapped while it's frying, and that's what's making the skin also like really crispy. Is like, you know, like almost like when you make chicharron, you want a little bit of moisture still in there, because as it's frying, you want that air as it's pushing out to actually be captured there, in between, and that being in between is going to make the texture of that skin actually crispy. And, you know, with the frying oil, I prefer peanut oil. If you got it and you're not allergic to it, that's the choice of a Chinese chef. Because of allergens here at Mama Boo, like, we use palm oil that is like, yeah, like kind of, it's like eco, like kind of palm oil, sustainable palm oil that we get. So, but like any neutral oil is going to be like also high temp neutral oils, sunflower, rice bran, canola, anything like that is going to be where you want to be. We are now going to pull it, and now we're going to rest it. Let's see, yeah, this is like kind of, you know, I geek out on is like that kind of crispiness. When it dries, that's going to be what's shattery, crispy. I do like to put a level of seasoning on this stage as it's kind of like coming out of the fryer. I like to give it a first seasoning, just because like as it rests, some of the moisture will come up to the skin, and it's kind of nice to like kind of give it some seasoning in that point. So it's been about 5 minutes. And yeah, we just seasoned it pretty, you know, liberally, after it comes out of the fryer. And this is now kind of like, yeah, it's like nice and dry. And we like to just serve this like kind of removed. This is kind of like where we like it, where the bone is still showing a little bit of that pink, but the meat, you can see that it's like fully cooked. For Chinese like butchers, like you want this bone to show a little bit of this pink. Kind of tells you that it's still very juicy and succulent right there. Yeah, we'll just kind of re-season this a little bit too, just because these cut parts don't have as much seasoning. Gives us an opportunity to kind of get the seasoning even more so in here. And some of this pickle, like to make sure there's a little bit of each. So some of that seaweed, some of this shiitake. And then some of this like caramelized garlic just sitting in the oil that was caramelized in. I like to kind of just serve this with it too. Give a little fat to this pickle as well. Yep. That's how it's kind of this amazing technique. Like it gets this crispy without any of that stuff. And like, a lot of Cantonese cooking too is about tasting the quality of the product. And this is all about like tasting chicken. It's like not tasting the seasoning or like the starches around it or the textures around it. It's like this is like as natural of a technique to show the really like the quality of the chicken. Thanks everybody for checking out this fried chicken recipe here at Mama Who. We're here in the Inner Richmond. My other restaurant, Mr. Juice in Chinatown. Come check us out. And I hope you enjoy.